Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Emmanuel, live at South by Southwest EDU where Philly goes to college. I'm here interviewing hometown Dean Whitney from UPenn. We got Philly in the building. Why don't you introduce yourself to everyone?
Hi, everyone. My name is Whitney Soule. I'm Vice Provost and Dean of Admissions at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And tomorrow I'm on a session called Mitigating Anxiety in the College Process. And I will be there with 3 other colleagues. All 4 of us work in different parts of the pathway to higher ed that have a contribution to anxiety that students feel. We have a representative from media, Jeff Salingo. We have a head of school from the Philadelphia area, Michael Gary from Friends Select School. And we have a high school college counselor from an urban public school, Carolyn Blair, who works for Clayton Schools in St. Louis, Missouri.
Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about your college journey. Just want to touch on that real quick. Where did you go to school?
I went to Bates College, which is a small liberal arts college in Lewiston, Maine. And the population there when I was a student was under 2,000. And I loved it.
What did you major in?
I was an English major.
Okay, and what made you choose that major?
I have to say it wasn't with a lot of direction. Coming out of high school, I knew that what I liked best about my high school classes, which were pretty straightforward, it's your basic history, English, math, science, language, English was my favorite because I really loved reading.
Right.
And I really loved writing. So as I was thinking about college, that seemed like, oh, an English major, I'm going to get to do a lot of that. What I did not really know when I was entering college is that most college majors have you do a lot of reading
Yes.
and a lot of writing. So I could have satisfied that interest probably doing lots of different majors or choosing something different. But I did stay with the English major. I really enjoyed it and had a chance, particularly in a liberal arts institution, to branch out and take a lot of other courses in areas that I really enjoyed a lot, particularly in the social sciences.
Awesome. So from English major into social sciences and what you're doing today, could you help thread that needle? Like, how'd you get here?
Well, you probably like me to talk about a path that was intentional and linear, and it was neither of those things.
Give us the real.
Yeah, when I graduated as an English major, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do still, and was a little late to accessing our career support office in college. They were there all 4 years that I was there, but I didn't make my way over there till things were getting serious, approaching graduation. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my degree. And in the meantime, I, through that career office, found an internship with the American Red Cross that was managed and offered by a Bates graduate who was the director of the Red Cross chapter there.
Wow.
And so she had an opening for summer intern. That was a great landing spot for me to figure out what I wanted to do next. She was a wonderful mentor, and but that was only for the summer. And so I was living in a house with it was supposed to be 4 of us in the house. I think there were 8 of us to make the rent. Wow. And when my summer...
You gotta do what you gotta do.
That's right. When my summer internship ended, I was doing whatever I could do to make money. So I was cleaning houses and dog sitting and teaching aerobics classes and a bunch of different clubs. And then did get a permanent job with a different chapter of the American Red Cross. And while I was working there, I came across an opening back at my college, Bates College, for an admission officer. And I had been a tour guide. I had hosted students overnight when I was in college, really enjoyed doing that. I was like, oh, that might be fun. I'm gonna apply for that job.
Wow.
And I did, and 30 plus years later, I'm still working in higher ed. But even, and admissions specifically, but even in the 30 years, I didn't always know that this is what I wanted to do. It sort of became 30 plus years and became dean work over time. As the more I did the work, the more I realized how many skills I enjoy using were activated in admission work. Some of it is independent work, some of it is collaborative, it's a lot of critical thinking, it's synthesizing of information, it's interpersonal skills. I mean, it's math.
Yeah.
So anyway, as I grew and matured in the job and my job got bigger and I had opportunities to focus on different components, I continued to really enjoy it and sort of continue following it. And I did have opportunities at different points along the way to think about exiting admissions and doing something else with
Right.
those same skills. And for a number of reasons, either because it wasn't the right job, I didn't get the job, or didn't feel like I could pursue it then because of other obligations. I was raising children and I wasn't always able to move. Continued to make sure that the responsibilities I had stayed close to things that mattered to me. And as I grew as a person and matured as an adult, I had more and more understanding of really the mission of education and opening opportunity. And I really connected with that as I became a more mature person. And then that became a very intentional purpose in which I can make a difference as a dean of admission.
As a student who's trying to figure that out, navigate that right now, I mean, like you said, it wasn't like linear, but that's the beauty of wisdom, is that as you get to a certain stage in your wisdom journey, you can look back on things and start connecting the dots. So for somebody that's like still trying to figure it out themselves right now, like who may not be able to see their path as linear, is there one or two gems you might be able to drop to them to help them be able to connect those dots a lot sooner than any, like you or I might have done?
Yeah, I mean, I think my best advice for a younger person is to think about, well, any person, but particularly students who are feeling they can't figure out how to connect the dots and they're trying to imagine the future and what to do to get to the future. First of all, the jobs that are going to be available when today's teenagers are my age, many of them don't exist.
Right.
So you don't even know what it is you're
Yeah,
shooting
you don't know what's
for,
going to happen.
right?
Yeah.
But also, I think the key part is staying aware, which is going to require some reflection, of what it is you like about what you're doing now, whatever the now is, whether it's school, whether it's activities, friends, what things you do with your family, any of those things that bring you joy, that you look forward to, that you can commit to and put energy into without feeling drained by doing it. Those are the things that you want to prioritize when you're thinking about whatever move you make next. That you're going to be able to access those feelings and those skills or those kinds of experiences in the next thing you take on. Because everything new has some aspect of it that you can't anticipate. You don't know if you're going to like it. But as long as you're making sure that some of the next thing is going to keep you close to things that matter to you at the core, then you have a lot more flexibility and the linear component of it starts to really be less important.
Gotcha. And for someone who's been in the game for 30 years, I'm sure you've seen so many things change. You know, landscape of education changed, technology, everything is impacting those things. Do you think that some of the core things that y'all looking for to accept students have remained the same, or what are some of the things that have changed in terms of how y'all looking to bring students into the fold at a university like UPenn or in other institutions, just in general?
Yeah, I think the core things remain the same, right? We're looking to build, I think this is true for any school, regardless of how big or small it is or where it is or how selective it is. You're looking to create an environment of learners who are going to work together and work with your faculty and use the resources of your school to advance what they know, to help their peers advance, to advance knowledge in an area. And so that's the core of what we're trying to evaluate and bring to our community. But how we do that and the discipline of how we evaluate and do selection, I think, has grown in a really important and positive way, much more broad, and has required a lot of, I think, sincerity and a willingness to look internally and evaluate whether the processes that we have suit the population that we are serving. And when I talk about the population I'm serving, I think about, when I first started working in the early 90s, 1991 maybe, in higher ed, they were paper applications. They were handwritten applications or done on a typewriter. And we were reading them and writing our notes by hand. And the bulk of our application pool, this would be true for most schools, was somewhat local. It was, your applicant pool represented primarily people who were in geographic proximity to know about your school. They knew somebody who went to your school. Or maybe they had heard about your school from being in proximity of an environment that had more knowledge base of institutions. But still fairly the bulk of the applicant pool was fairly close.
Right.
As the internet came online, all of a sudden access to information and learning about schools went wide open. And so students could learn about schools that were nowhere near them at all. And they could do it on a search engine with things they care about. And all of a sudden, these big lists of schools would come in front of students, and they would be able to think about more places. And so they could apply to more places.
Right.
So, and it was free.
Yeah.
It was free to get information.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, our applicant pools became bigger and broadly diverse in every possible way. Geographically diverse, socioeconomically diverse, racially and ethnically diverse. Like every component just expanded. And so it required, as that was happening, to think about, all right, we have so many more people in the applicant pool, and they represent so many more new things in the aggregate than we might have had in our applicant pool before to that same extent, that we need to think about the questions that we're asking. We need to think about how we're using the answers that we get to learn about the students and think about them and their contribution to the community and how we would support them. And that evolution over decades has been really exciting, and also, I think, never stopping. So,
Right.
One of the things that we evaluate that people probably don't know from the outside is, of course, we're looking at academics, right?
Yeah.
We need to make sure that students have both the content and the skill to access that content to be ready to start in what it is they want to take on at Penn. That's really primary. Like, we have to establish that. After that, we are also looking at contribution, and we evaluate the answers that we ask questions to bring it forward, and then we evaluate through activities and what students write about and what people say about them, how that student impacts and creates a contribution in their space, whether that is within their family, like a very nuclear environment, whether it's in their school, in their classroom, among their friends, community, like, you could take it to whatever level you want. And we also look for purpose. And by purpose, we're thinking not of passion, not of the direct plan, but is there evidence in this application that the student can organize their time and their attention around things that matter to them? That's purpose. Because what matters to them is going to keep changing. So like what we want to see is that when they care about something and it has importance, can they attach to it and organize themselves around that?
Wow.
And in order to evaluate it, we have to make sure that what we're assessing doesn't require financial resource to be impressive. So it can't be that contribution is at its highest if it's contribution at a national level, in which somebody might have needed a coach or someone to drive them around, or lessons, or to have the time, which they don't have because they're working, right? So contribution can't be about resource-driven results. We can appreciate the results that come from resources where students have made a really big contribution. But we also have to equally value a significant contribution that can be made by kids who go home or pick up their siblings on their way home from school, get their siblings, they all go home together, and our applicant is the one overseeing the homework, making dinner, and helping run the family, and then after that they do their own homework. That's an incredibly significant contribution, right? That's like at the top. So thinking about how to do that has definitely been an evolution as the expanse of our applicant pool has grown in the best possible ways over time.
And as you're talking, I was just, we had a conversation yesterday with somebody in admissions, and they talked about executive functioning. And when you mentioned purpose, I'm like connecting the dots in my head now. Like, it's like moving with intention. Like, of course you would want a student that's going to represent your school and as alumni to move with a certain intention, right? Because it represents what the school does, but it also shows the ability, like you said, to move with purpose.
It's also their best way of getting the most out of their experience with us, right?
That investment they make, they got to get the most out of it.
Yeah, for sure.
So Philly Goes to College, we have students, I've had students from Penn, we don't use the word intern, we use the term collegiate collaborators.
I love it.
And so we have I have one working with me now. I had one last year, awesome, they're very awesome. Then one I really wanted to work with them, but something happened with the work study. Anyway, long story short, she said, I wasn't sure, she was from New Jersey. She's like, I'm not sure how I would have got into Penn at all. I didn't even think Ivy League. She said, you know what happened? I got through Questbridge. And she explained her adversity in her background. And she said that she feels like that contributed to her application, helping her get it in. So to hear you say that and then hear what she says, like, okay, this is real, like Penn really doing this. So I just wanted to say kudos to you for that. That's amazing. Obviously applying to college, financially, all that stuff can be very, very stressful. It's particularly when you're like applying to a school like Penn. Can we speak to the student that is overwhelmed and the pressure that comes with it all? One thing you could tell them to stay motivated and positive as they're embarking on this journey.
Yes, I mean, there are many things I would like to say to students embarking on them. I'm looking right at the camera because if you're a student, you're watching me, I'm talking to you, that whatever happens with a college admissions application and the response, if the response is not admission, nothing about you has been diminished. Like all that you were on the day that you hit submit and all the time that you were waiting for a decision back is still as impressive and significant and entirely you as it was before you got a decision from the institution. And so that is, you hold a place on the planet that nobody else does. It's the strongest thing you have in applying to colleges to stand out. And when a school doesn't admit you, that's not a message saying that you're not good enough for that school, you didn't fit well, we don't think you could manage it. The school like Penn, what it's saying is we have tens of thousands more applications than we have space for, and the students that we admit we know are going to enjoy Penn, are ready for Penn, and will be great contributors. But that doesn't mean that the students that we didn't take wouldn't also be great fit, enjoy it, and be great contributors, but we've run out of space. So I would take the mindset of everything that you felt good about in describing about yourself when you applied to college, move forward with that, and there will be opportunities. The other thing I would say too is education is always there for you. So I think there's this anxiety that you have to enter college or you have to enter some version of education right after you graduate from high school. It's not true. You can take on education whenever you're ready for it and relieve yourself of the pressure that it has to be enrolling somewhere months after you graduate from high school.
That's so awesome. All right, before we let you go, we're gonna hit you with some quick fire questions.
Okay.
All right, question number one, what was your favorite college memory?
Honestly, I think it was graduation, but not because I was like done with college and getting out of there, because if you recall from where we started, I had no idea what I was gonna do.
Yeah.
But it was sitting with my classmates and being able to call up that feeling of what we all felt like when we were new, and we all wanted to make friends really fast. We all felt like everybody else had friends, and none of us did. And the truth is, it takes a while to cultivate legitimate friendships.
Yes.
And there we all were, and you know, my school was small. It was under 500 students in a class, so I knew everybody who was sitting around me when we graduated, and it felt like such an amazing group energy of positiveness and having each other, you know, through a 4-year experience as we launched into sort of the next phase of independent life. And it was really powerful.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Like, that's so true. That's like something, that's an experience that no one can take from you. And then like, if you keep them connections going, it's like, it does wonders. That's a fact. All right, last question. If you could say one thing to your high school self, what would that be?
I don't know that my high school self would have listened to my mature adult self, but if I could say this to her and she would listen, what I would say is, this is not all as serious as you think it is, and this this, whatever this is, whether it's college, a particular college, taking a break, choosing which job to do, none of those things define the rest of your life. Each one of the decisions you make is going to bring you in front of opportunities, and it's the you that I was talking about earlier that will take whatever opportunity that is and bring you closer to the next opportunity. That whatever opportunities you don't have or that you have to turn away from if you're making choices, they're not the ones to focus on. The opportunities to focus on are the ones that are available to you that you can choose, or they might be circumstantial and you don't get to choose them. But each moment is not as serious as it feels in the great expanse of your life.
Wow. Thank you so much. I don't got nothing else to say after that. That was amazing.
All right, thanks for including me.
No